Welcome to Three, a show about Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, and part of the Tennis Channel podcast network. I'm Gill with Joel Drucker and Amy Lundy, and we will get into our year in review as we get prepared to flip the calendar and simultaneously begin the tennis season. I've always thought it's kind of neat how it works that way. One perk of the calendar, good symmetry. But Rafael Nadal has quasi already started his season in the exhibition form. We'll also get to Australia and Novak shortly, but let's start with this Mubadala exhibition. I can't stand exhibition tennis, and the reason is I don't think you can take much from it. I actually like it when it's goofy, when they mic the players up and they really lean into the exhibition. But I do think that maybe there were some takeaways, especially because it had been so long since we saw Nadal. Amy, I know that you had an eye on that, and what did you think of it?
Upon watching the matches live, he played two matches and he lost to Murray and Shapovalov. And upon watching them live, I thought, Rafa looks really good. He's maybe a little rusty, but he's moving well, and his energy, his shot selection, all that looks really good. Maybe his timing was a little off or something like that. So I came away from it like really encouraged. But then I decided to rewatch the matches. And when you go on TC Plus and you get like a different feed, and a lot of times the feed starts when they're in the tunnel and they're getting ready. And we've all seen Rafa's pre-match routine that he does in the tunnel, where he's jumping around and he's doing sometimes he jumps really high in the air and he's doing all his, movements and stuff. And he was going through all that, but I noticed that he was kind of looking down at his feet and he was kind of shifting his feet, and those pre-match movements didn't have the same life that they normally have. And maybe that's just because he was being careful and didn't want to injure himself before he even got out on the court, but it just was a little off routine for Nadal. So listening to his comments after the match, he made it sound like the Australian Open was somehow in question, and that has me a little concerned.
Well, it's interesting. You have the tea leaf reading, Amy, of the Rafa in the tunnel, and yet months ago you made a comment about seeing Federer hit a couple balls in practice, and I scoffed at that. But then, sure enough, Roger kind of took some time off. So we'll see with Rafa. I mean, it was great to watch him play. I enjoy just watching him in action. And you see, even in exhibition, oh, wow, look at that skill. Look who that is. And of course, now it's a little precious because we know it's a lot closer to midnight for Nadal and his career. And let's hope he just stays healthy and can thoroughly compete in the Australian Open. I mean, I think of all the times he's exited that tournament pretty banged up. So I hope he stays that way. And of course, now we also have the news that he has COVID. So that puts a little cramp in his prep, I suppose. Does it?
I think it depends. I mean, I would imagine it does, just given that regardless of if he has symptoms or not, he's not going to go train, or maybe he can try to socially distance train. But I'm assuming that it will prevent him from doing some of that preparation. But in terms of the timing, it could be worse. It could have been this week or next week. And obviously the closer you get to Australia, the worse it is if you get COVID. So hopefully Rafa's not dealing with a bad case in terms of the symptoms. I did think that he looked a little bit thinner, and I know Amy, you did as well. And yes, I thought that was interesting.
I thought he looked thinner in a good way, very fit. And he was wearing all black. So black, as we women know, is very slimming. So I couldn't tell if that was it. But he did look in tip-top condition just from a body standpoint. And again, his movement, the types of shots that he hit, he volleyed quite a bit. his overheads, which are, the piece de resistance, everything looked really good. So it's hard to say. And like you said, Gill, it's not real match competition. So it's hard for me to take a whole lot from this other than just happiness that he's back out on the court.
So he's 35, and that was the age Federer was 5 years ago, and he had that incredible 2017 Australian. As you're talking about him, I would really enjoy seeing Nadal have a superb Australian Open. That's not necessarily winning it, but just one where he plays through good matches, wins the early matches fairly convincingly, so has energy left for a late stage match. And then we're in like the semis, finals, and see what happens. I don't want to see him kind of go out in the round of 16 to a player I'd like to think he should beat, but we'll see.
It has been a while, and maybe I'm completely missing something, and we'll get to this, but I feel like Nadal hasn't suffered a shocking defeat early on in a major in a very long time. I mean, I'm really straining my memory to really think of a recent example. Okay, so that's Nadal. He said in his words, by the way, in terms of his symptoms, that he's experiencing some unpleasant moments, but getting better bit by bit. So we'll have to wait and see. And yeah, he did sound non-committal with his schedule, but again, I don't think that there's much to read into there. And it's usually wise not to read much into exhibition in terms of level of play as well. As for Novak Djokovic, I thought by now he would have on his own terms made his Australia itinerary known to everyone. We still don't know. I don't know. I'm wondering, because I anticipated that Novak at a certain point was going to almost kind of press release style let everyone know what the plans were. Maybe that's not what he's going to do. Is he just going to show up and then we'll know?
It'll be like if we catch a glimpse of him getting off his plane or in a car somewhere, going to the facility, it's going to be like, paparazzi footage. There he is. My big thing, and I've been pretty vocal on Twitter about this, is the thing with the medical exemption. We don't know anything about that. All we know is what we've been assured by Craig Tiley and Tennis Australia, that it's a group of doctors. Tennis Australia, it's blinded. They do not know. The doctors themselves don't know. They are deciding on medical exemptions. And you know what? I believe them. I mean, call me like naive. I'm not conspiratorial in any way. So those are the facts before us. And I don't think that medical doctors would bend the rules in this way if they're assuring us that this is the process and it's blinded. So if he applied for a medical exemption, which we don't know that he did, he will be judged on that and they'll make their decision. But the bottom line is Novak wants to keep it private. And as much as I would like for him to tell us the deal, he has a right to that privacy. I firmly believe that. So we'll know, I guess, in a few days when we see whether he shows up for the ATP Cup.
Novak it's so interesting. It's so interesting how straightforward he is inside the lines about how he approaches the game, the discipline, the training, even the playing style. It's very candid, straightforward, and direct. And then things like this, absolutely right. He has the right to his privacy, particularly as an individual. As someone who is, I think, leading a fledgling player union and attempting to be a leader statesman, it leaves me a little baffled still how he goes about conducting these things with statements and things like that. And his acting as private citizen Novak, which he has the right to do. And then, well, okay, so what's the leader? What's with the other players? And where is the PTPA in all this? And what's going on with that? I mean, it just leaves me a little confused about maybe Novak is appropriately compartmentalizing these things. And Again, I hope amid all of that, I hope he does show up and whatever happens, and we get to see him play some great tennis. I mean, that's, when you peel away all the other things around these folks, that's what I want to see. I want to see them playing tennis. I don't want to have to spend my time contemplating their statements and their tweets and their this and their that. I want to see them play tennis.
Amen to that. I am, again, I'm actually starting to find the whole thing dragging out mildly amusing. Just because I just want to know, like, it's like almost a WWE professional wrestling play where, like, I do see him, Amy, like on the tarmac in an airport in Melbourne, getting off the plane. It would be an entrance unlike any other in the history of tennis.
Will he wear a belt like that has his 9 Australian Open?
That's a good idea. Or the capes that they wear and just fling off the cape.
Yeah.
But, just a few things on this. The players, and this has already started to happen, are going to be testing positive for Omicron left and right. I mean, they're going to come in and we're going to have a pretty diminished field because some of these players are going to have to miss the tournament, go into protocol, whatever, and they're going to have to find players that are already in Australia that are not positive. So you're going to have a diminished field. That is an opportunity for Novak. And, I just think that Nadal being iffy and Federer not being in the field, my hope is that he plays, that he's able to play.
Yeah, for sure. Amy, I do think that it's a good point. If global sports is any indication, and just the cases in the world, the fact is there has not been a tennis tournament ravaged by COVID-19. It hasn't happened yet. We haven't had mass positive tests at a tournament. The NHL had been fine. The NFL had been fine. The NBA had been fine. Nobody's fine right now. Everyone's testing positive, and we should be bracing for that in Melbourne. It's just going to be how it works. Let's push this off to next week. But, I have my breath held a little bit with the response of the Australian government and what it's going to be. Is everything going to stay the same despite this new development, which is that whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, Omicron is wreaking havoc? So let's see what happens.
Yeah, they have promised, because more than possibly any other country in the world, they have endured this draconian lockdown where they promised the citizens of that country that they would have this summer and they would have this tournament and there wouldn't be restrictions. And the very latest that I've read is that we're going to let it go. You're going to be free to walk around. We're not going to do diminished crowds. Of course, that could change, but these people have been through a lot, and I have friends and some family members, extended family members in Australia that have not been able to move and live life really. So I'm hoping that we get our crowds and that everything is under control. Fortunately, the Omicron is proving to be milder, and that is a fact.
Yep, hospitalization rates way down, so that's nice to see. Let's move on before we get to the year in review, and we'll go through Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, just kind of talk through their 2021s. Today, Joel, the death of Joan Didion, who I understand meant a lot to you growing up as a writer.
Joan Didion was a significant journalist who was very influential on my writing style. She attended the same college as I did at UC Berkeley, and her work was very present. 20 plus years before me, but her work was very present in the late 70s and early 80s. And in a way, though she never wrote about tennis, her presence helped me end up eventually writing about tennis. And the way this happened, in an odd way, I was a senior in college writing an essay I was trying to write an essay for a writing class that was juxtaposing, this is very much in the Joan Didion style, juxtaposing the sunny parts of my life and my world in tennis and the dark parts of my life, which is my mentally ill schizophrenic brother. And I wrote this essay, and the teacher said, I don't quite get what you're getting at with your brother, because at that point I wasn't emotionally in a place to really articulate it. But this tennis stuff is interesting. Why don't you write more about tennis? So I decided, all right, I'm going to write an essay about my favorite tennis player, who happened to be Jimmy Connors. And that essay was the genesis of the book that's sitting right over your left shoulder, Gill, Jimmy Connors Saved My Life, that I ended up writing 22 years later. And so in its own odd way, Joan Didion helped me, writing about her, trying to mimic her, helped me end up writing about tennis. And so that was pretty propulsive and meaningful.
Yeah, that you can see Jimmy Connors right over my left shoulder there. And so Joel, that's awesome. I mean, this book, would it exist without her influence? I mean, that's the question.
True. And she's very influential on my style. She was writing about California and Berkeley and LA. So this is the first writer when I was 19. I could read a little bit more for style than for content. When you're an undergrad, a lot of the writing is like, what's going on here? Where is this part of England? Where are they writing in the South? Where are these areas? But she was writing about areas that were familiar. So because they're familiar, I could then study her style more. And her style, a great many journalists are attuned to her style. And so they attempted to mimic her as she mimicked Ernest Hemingway. And so there you have it. So again, I think the only time she ever wrote about tennis was probably in passing, was some piece. Oh, she had a house that had once had a tennis court at it. But I don't think I'd be surprised if she ever hit a tennis ball.
So she just looked at the tennis court?
I guess it had once been there at this house she lived in Hollywood, in this kind of odd part of Hollywood in the late 60s. So kind of interesting. But I'm sure she would have had something to say about tennis, because she had something to say about anything she cast her eye on. But anyway, just interesting influence who shaped me eventually writing about tennis.
Rest in peace.
Nice.
All right, let's get to our year in review again. As soon as 2022 begins, so will have the tennis season. So we need to get ahead of our New Year festivities and do some reflecting. I love New Year's, one of my favorite holidays. I just like looking back. I absolutely love it. Let's start with Novak, who, one of the striking things to me about this season is not just that he won a lot and that he was successful this year, but that he was the center of attention and that he was driving the narrative of men's tennis throughout the year in the absence of Federer and Nadal. So much is talked about. What does this post Big Three world look like? And it felt a lot like the Big One world in 2021 for a lot of reasons. And that was really important. I almost felt like Novak was carrying men's tennis on his shoulders from an interest and a narrative point of view.
That's a great call. I think he really did. It's strange. I mean, he didn't win as many tournaments this year as he has in the past, but he won those first 3 tournaments, and that was incredible. And of course, he lost in the finals of the US Open, and that failed to complete the calendar slam. But he did, because it's still, the year was so austere at times, because again, we're still in the pandemic, travel is uncertain. How much can you watch? What's the fan presence? And you're right, Novak really did. I mean, look, he won those 3 majors. He beat rising youngsters who were trying to topple him, like Medvedev in Australia, and then Tsitsipas in Roland Garros, and Berrettini. And he really was. I mean, it's an A+ kind of year. A great year.
I think back to a year ago, and I really caught some flack because I had said that Novak was not my player of the year last year, because he defaulted from the US Open, or was defaulted. This year, he's my player of the year. Big surprise. He comported himself through everything brilliantly, and he played brilliantly. And my match of the year was the semifinal between him and Rafa at Roland Garros.
Yep.
That was the only match this year where I felt legit butterflies in my stomach. I mean, I was really, I almost couldn't sit still watching the match. And I got up at one point and I yelled to everybody in the house, "This is so great. This is living up to everything." So, it didn't really feel like a big one kind of year, or there's a new big three. It didn't feel that way to me because Roger did play and Rafa did play, and there was that great match between Novak and Rafa at Roland Garros. But I will say that Novak had, a year that will go down in history, in tennis history. And I know that there's a documentary in the works that looks back at a lot of it. So hopefully that comes to fruition. And, he just, despite the fact that he didn't win the US Open, it was an incredibly compelling year.
He did have a few moments of less than great behavior in the Olympics. I mean, that wasn't some of his greatest moments, of throwing a racket and getting a little angry. So
many players do that, Joel.
I'll take them to test too. I mean, that's fine, absolutely. But throwing a racket into the stands wasn't one of his greatest moments. Right? That happened, and
right.
That wasn't so great. And and obviously, I think the quest for Tokyo was very ambitious, and I admire him for doing that, not just for going there attempting to win the tournament, but being there as an Olympic athlete and being around all the other Olympic athletes who so admired him. And we saw then what a influence, what a icon he is to many other athletes. And that was a neat thing for tennis, because you don't always see that with tennis, particularly in the US. Wow, this tennis guy is really inspiring a lot of other athletes. So I admire that he went to Tokyo, probably based on how he played and even behaved there. He was probably quite worn out. And I don't blame him for that. After Paris, after London, I mean, we've spoken for years about what a tough double that is. And then to just a few short weeks later, go to Tokyo and compete in the Olympics, I handed to him for that. But I think he was feeling a little run down by that. And I hope that didn't hurt him for the US Open. I hope it didn't, because he's so fit. So I like to think it didn't.
I don't think it did, because he took so much time off. And then now look, I think it would have actually, I take it back. I think it would have helped him if he didn't need to take that time off, if he could have played Cincinnati, mostly mentally, not physically, not because he needs extra matches. Just, I thought it was very cumbersome towards the end of the year to play every single match with enormous stakes, which he did. And in terms of the Olympics thing, the way I actually look back at it, now that we're kind of distanced from it, is he didn't handle the Zverev loss well. The Olympics is one of the few events where you have to lose and then you keep going. And he was in the mixed doubles, and he had to play a bronze medal match. And tennis is not a sport that usually asks you to lose and then show up to work the next day and deal with it. And I mean, he just didn't handle the loss well. This is, something that he wants really bad. He only gets a chance at it every 4 years, and was definitely also probably run down in a weird environment in the Olympic Village and all. And yeah, I mean, there's no way around it. Just didn't handle it.
Yeah, but I think it is unfortunate calendar luck, because in another year, he wins the first 3 majors. He gets to take off a good amount of summer, play a North American event or 2, come to the US Open and kind of get in that place. But in this case, the zigging, zagging of taking time off and the pressure he felt to do well for Serbia at the Olympics, which he does, which he takes very seriously. That was probably part of it too. And that's a little tough, but still a great year. I mean, and from a guy who it's hard to imagine he won't be the all-time slam winner soon enough. He's not going to get 21, 22. Who knows where it's going to end for him, because he's so fit and so prepared.
Yeah. And for Amy to bring up the Nadal match, that's a legacy win. it's a real legacy win that was very memorable. In terms of the tennis, and we'll end with Novak on this, the serve fine-tuned, the forehand over the course of the clay court season and in that match against Nadal really stood out to me. The volleys, we saw him serve volley his way in a Masters 1000 final over 20 times and just willingly go to the net. The drop shot usage, which we criticized in 2020 oftentimes, became something that really seemed like something he could go to flawlessly for the most part and always pick the right spots. In terms of his development on the court and his game, is there a way to kind of synthesize what this year showed from Novak on the court?
I think that it shows that he's still in his prime, and he's not that much younger than Rafa. So it's really interesting. I think he's serving better than he ever has in his career. He's always been an all-court player, but he's really refining his volley and his serve and volley, and all of his strokes are just in their prime right now. So I know his dad came out and said that he may win another couple slams and play for another couple of years, and then that'll be good enough. But to me, he seems at his peak, and I'm looking forward to watching what happens in 2022 with Novak.
Yeah, I think it just shows his appetite for improvement, and I like the drop shots get better when you can volley more, because now you have different ways to win points in different parts of the court. So you become less dependent on one tactic, and the other thing diversifies the other tactic. So it's this kind of exponential broadening the line of attack. I mean, geez, okay, what's next? Going to be called the Sabdi, the sneak attack by Djokovic, or the Sabin sneak attack by Novak, and just the enhancements to the game that are so impressive. I mean, it'll be interesting to study, to do some YouTube study of him each of the last 5 years back over the 15 years to see how he's emerged, the improvement of the forehand and the serve and all these things. It's just great from these great foundational building blocks, and to see and how he's raising the bar, and he's going to say to these guys, these Berrettinis and Medvedevs, okay, what have you got? Really, Danielle, you think you can do that again? Let's see. And I'm really excited to see him keep competing and wanting to show these contenders, no, you're not there yet, or I dare you, go ahead. You better bring some real good A+ game to topple me.
The racket skills for me, this year cemented for me that it's the best they have ever been. And I argue with anyone who tries to tell me that his athleticism hasn't declined, or he's just as physical as he was in 2011 through 2015. I think there's major evidence that suggests that he's not as physical, but the racket skills and the completeness of his game, I thought this season was just such a showcase of that, and that it's better than ever. Let's go to Nadal. I was looking at his career stats right before we went on, and I looked at how many matches he played, 29. That's the least number of matches he's played since 2003. And that surprised me, because I always obviously looked at this year as a year where Rafa struggled with his health, no doubt about that. But I figured, in a career where there's been plenty of injuries, that there would have been seasons in there that were worse, or if not as bad as this one. But no, 2021 was the worst Nadal health year in terms of number of matches he was able to play in a really, really long time.
It's tough. Australian Open started in February in 2021. He pretty much after Roland Garros played the DC tournament. I mean, pulls the plug on Wimbledon and the US Open. Tough time. So that's why it was good early in the show. We're talking about how good it was to see him looking pretty healthy and fit and eager. Well, you never doubt his eagerness, but you just hope he can be healthy. But again, some of this comes down to technique. And we've been talking about this for years with Nadal, and he defies things. He defies it at a cost. Whereas Novak and Roger have both more efficient technique than Rafa. Keeps them lasting longer.
I just think that we didn't really know the extent of the foot problem. I mean, we know that he struggled with his feet, but I didn't realize that it was like a congenital thing and that this is something that's ebbed and flowed. And it's really amazing that the guy is going to go down as one of the greatest of all time with a congenital foot issue. I mean, it's just stunning. I kind of, I mean, I hate to say this, but I kind of look at anything that happens with him from here on out as complete icing on the cake. I mean, he has given us so much joy over the years, and if there's more to come, great. If this is like his last hurrah, that's fine too.
I could push back on that with this. His win percentage this year was 83%, which is better than it was in 2020, better than it was in 2015 and in 2016, on par with 2011, which wasn't a fantastic year, better than 2014. When he was out there, and I even think that the injuries were affecting him in some of his losses, including in Australia against Tsitsipas. It's almost a good thing that when Nadal is having these down years, as 2021 was, it's not because he's losing. It's just because he can't take the court.
Well, that's been the case through his career, because again, this guy's been an elite player for 15 years, a super elite player. So yeah, high winning percentage, but far fewer matches.
Yeah.
And far fewer matches than usual. I mean, a good half as many matches as a player of that level usually plays, right?
So he was, I'm thinking back to his year. He had a decent clay season. He beat Tsitsipas, right, in that kind of
to win Barcelona.
Yeah, to win Barcelona. And then things were looking good at Roland Garros, but apparently at Roland Garros is when the feet started to really bother him. So, if he injured himself or that was when the pain really kicked in, and he acquitted himself well against Novak, but he wasn't able to get it done. That doesn't seem so bad. And then he really didn't play, right, guys, until he played in Washington, D.C.
Yep.
And he beat Jack Sock, and he lost to Lloyd Harris, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And, he wasn't feeling his best there either. So it was really, he had a very good few months and he won a tournament, and then he was pretty much injured the rest of the year.
Well, he wants to point himself to Paris the way Federer has been trying to point himself to London. This is my shot. And the difference between them and Novak is Novak has 4 places where he can point himself. Novak is still fit enough and healthy enough.
Mm-hmm.
He has 4 places to point himself, as he did all in 2021. And those other guys are a little bit more like, okay, let me manage, let me orchestrate, let me take a month off here, let me not do this one. And so that means they're just kind of like doing a workaround. They're doing a workaround around quality of physicality. And that's tough. I'm not saying they're part-time players and they're all-time greats. And of course, I guess we'll soon enough address Federer, who's the real wild card of our 3.
Yeah. If we're doing New Year's resolutions for Rafa, obviously stay healthy is the number 1, but number 2, I think serve better. It just didn't seem to, he seems to be falling behind, I think, in that aspect, especially if you look at what Novak's doing. If you look at, okay, now he has to play Medvedev, he has to play Zverev. It's just, I feel like he needs a little more help from that shot. And that would be technically my New Year's resolution for him.
My New Year's resolution for Rafa would be to stay away from questions about Novak because he made the comment about, something that was construed as Novak is obsessed and I'm not obsessed. And it was an un-Rafa-like comment because normally he's just so zen and everything. And he comes out with these bon mots that are just, words to live by, but this one was not a good one. So just, pass on those and focus on yourself.
And come to net more to make things sometimes easier for you, just to do that. I don't know how. I don't know if it's serve and volley. I don't know if it's approaching, it's returning. Nadal getting to net is the trickiest. He's the trickiest one to do of our three, even though he's great when he's there. It's just that his technique doesn't get him into points at the net quite the way the other two do. But if he does, maybe matches can go faster, a little easier on his body. And hopefully that's the case, because he is. I like seeing him at the net, but just a bit more. And who knows what the Mark Lopez influence will be. I mean, or is that just a guy he and Mark Lopez, he adores Mark Lopez, and they've won doubles titles together. And I don't know what that's going to mean for him joining the Team Rafa. So we'll see.
Yeah, for those who may have missed that, Carlos Moya isn't going anywhere, but Mark Lopez is being added to the payroll. Okay. Roger Federer tried to come back, did come back. I mean, it's not as if he failed to come back.
He won matches. He made the quarters at Wimbledon, Gill. Is that not?
No, well, exactly. You have to stop yourself. Well, let's remember that his comeback wasn't really at Geneva. That was like the real comeback. We had kind of fake comeback in Doha. Or am I getting my D's confused? Doha, Dubai. He lost to Basilashvili. Dubai. Okay, there you go. Thank you. Lost to Basilashvili. Then he had to take more time off because the knee wasn't right. Comes back. He has that very controversial Roland Garros, wins a couple matches, beats Kopfer, pulls out before playing Berrettini. Loses to Felix, played unbelievable in that match in the Wimbledon warm-up in Halle, and then Wimbledon, the loss to Hurkacz after making the quarterfinal, and the way he lost was jarring. 6-love in the third set. Man, where to even kind of start with this? I mean, what did we learn about Roger here in this kind of clearly less than 100% health knee issue ridden comeback?
We learned that he's beloved. That's one thing we learned, which we already know, but that people just want to see that guy play a little bit more. But also, wow, he is in one fragile. I mean, there have been the stories we've read about how he describes the rehab. And when someone describes the rehab as that extensive and that doubtful about even playing Wimbledon next year, and when they say that, I mean, I think that really leads me to wonder how Roger's 2022 is going to go. I mean, if we said now, will Roger play? We talk about Nadal in 29 matches. 29 matches. You think Federer's going to play 29 matches next year, guys? I mean, I don't like.
I don't know. I have no idea.
Right, we have 9 matches, so it's kind of like every Roger Federer match is a blessing. The chance to see him play one. I mean, icing, but sprinkles.
But I just want to I want to throw a follow up at you, Joel. The Wimbledon quarterfinal run, to me, that's worth. I mean, considering he was clearly not at 100%, he still made the quarterfinals. How do you look at that in hindsight? Is that like a whoa? These skills don't really go away. And Roger, if the knee rehab is as successful as you would hope, he could be back in the mix? Or is it kind of this year kind of confirming that we probably never see Roger Federer healthy again?
That might have been, I hope not. I really hope not. That might have been his Jimmy Connors 91 US Open. It might have been. But
you guys are, first of all, here's what I learned. I learned what the injury was, because we never really knew. It was the medial collateral ligament with some, patellar damage or whatever. So to me, that was actually positive, because it could be worse. I personally learned to just listen to the player, listen to what he says. Because he wasn't trying to pull a fast one on anyone, he wasn't being dishonest. He at every step of the way he was like, yeah, I'm feeling a little pain, or no, I'm not ready to retire yet, I want to try to come back one time. And people were like, oh, he's done, he's over, he's, whatever. No, that's not what he said. If you just listen to what Roger says, he's not lying to you. He's telling you everything that's going on. So I learned a lot from that, just to kind of keep things simple and not try to speculate beyond what the player is saying. And there were some moments like I don't think Marin Cilic really enjoys playing Roger Federer. I don't think Dominic Kepfer would tell you that it was particularly a good day at the office having to play Roger Federer.
Nori, I just want to throw out there, he finished 11th in the race. Federer beating Wimbledon.
Yeah. I mean, the guy, the forehand, the spot serving, all those hallmarks of his game are still there. So, what's he going to do? Is he going to play 27 matches? Is he going to play 9 matches? I don't know. And he may not know either. So let's just see.
I agree with that. I agree. I mean, I wasn't saying when I said that may have been a 91 Jimmy Connors without snowing, I'm not saying he's done. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what to me with Federer, first, grass is the idiosyncratic surface that he's the master of. And so that his game works really well, and he could still befuddle a great many opponents on that surface. Yeah, I like your Cilic thing, and he was a little cowed by the whole Roger express and the great ways Roger can play. Yeah, you're right. We don't know, and we don't know how much the rehab is going to take hold and what he can do. And we've seen things with athletes and how they can, there are all sorts of new time standards. It's just, it was interesting to see. I mean, for example, the Paris exit disturbed me, the way he left Roland Garros on his terms that way, and to say, okay, I'm not going to play the tournament anymore.
Even knowing that maybe he was in pain, he was feeling pain at that time, and he thought, oh, well, maybe if I can rest it a little bit and then come back for Wimbledon, Well,
I don't know if I'm misremembering.
We talked about that. He was feeling pain on the court on that cold. I mean, that was a bad evening of tennis in Roland Garros. That was a horrible conditions. Okay, good. Then defaulted match points. Then go Tom Gorman, as Tom Gorman did once. I know. I'm not living it.
I think we're nitpicking a little bit with that.
It's a year review. We're allowed to.
Yeah.
We're allowed to. It is. I'm not slapping too hard. I'm just a little. It's like you just see in tennis how, in all these sports, how the rules works. What they called in basketball the Jordan rules. So these were a bit of the Federer rules, and I just want to let it be noted how he did exit Roland Garros. And you're right, and get ready for Wimbledon. We all knew that. Everybody knew that, and everybody let it be. It's all right. It's okay, Roger. We need you at Wimbledon too.
I don't know. I think it's he really did have some people, not us, I don't think, some people believing that he was actually headed back to the Wimbledon final for another match with Novak Djokovic. So I almost think it's impressive that he even got that far on short notice. But now this becomes, the longer this drags out, the more of an experiment it becomes.
Yeah.
How little tennis can you play over the course of 3 years and still be okay
and be 40 years old?
Exactly.
Yes.
And be 40 years old. But hopefully he's watching a lot of Tampa Bay Buccaneers and what Brady's doing at the moment.
And Phil Mickelson, winning the PGA championship at age 50.
Well, there you go. That's right. So it's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of like the sports aging paradigm, and with health and fitness and ways that players can take care of themselves. I mean, look, I think maybe 5 or 12 years from now, we're going to be watching Novak grapple with this too, and how you manage it. And I think even the sports bodies are figuring out, we do like having these people here, and let's make sure they're allowed to be here and they have chances to play. And whether it's wild cards or different things with rankings, it's fine. It's fine. We want to see Roger Federer play more. And I'm sure he's trying to figure out, how have I ever stopped? Would I ever stop? Or do I just do it? And it does, and still, as I've said before, it cracks me up when people bring up retirement at press conferences as if Federer's going to say, yeah, I hadn't thought about that until you asked me. Come to think of it, yeah, that was my last match. I mean, we know that when Federer decides that he wants to end it, he will have thought it out quite well, whether it's Basel, whether it's Wimbledon, whatever it is, he's going to be aware of it. And in the meantime, we'll enjoy him.
Was that range 5 to 12 years, Joel?
Yes, I said 5 to 12 years.
Oh boy.
Yeah, Novak's going to be 46. And yeah, based on how he, yeah. But hey, how old is Tom Brady now? 43?
Yeah, I think that's right.
That's the American football player for the international audience that watches. Yeah. He's right.
And then, you know, I feel like Tony Reale at the on PTI. Amy, you said earlier that last year in 2020, Novak wasn't your player of the year. I just want to, can we refresh? Was it team?
Yeah. No, it was Rafa.
Oh, it was Rafa. Okay. It was actually a tough question in 2020. You had the 3 majors split 1-1-1. So it was actually a debate, and this year, not so much a debate. Just to bow tie Roger Federer, you know, the one thing that I was encouraged with in terms of the aftermath, besides the fact that he played decently well when he was on the court, relatively, I guess, you know, it depends where you put the bar. You know, clearly he hasn't tried everything, and medically there were more things for him to attempt. He explicitly didn't say, you know, I'm having the same operation again. No, it was okay. We're going to do something else now and see if it works. And that is what is most positive in my eyes heading into 2022. So New Year's resolution is for the medical community to come through big time for Roger.
Yeah. And, you know, I have tons of friends that have had medial collateral injuries, and most of them have not had surgery because it's one of those weird things that actually can heal itself. And sometimes they'll go in there and they'll scope it and they'll just clean it up, but they're not, you know, fixing the ligament. And that may have been, you know, what Roger was trying to do, but then he went in and he got the big one, and he was on crutches and all that. So fingers crossed. Come on, Roger.
I want my New Year's resolution. I want, since you're so good at scouting this, Amy, that first Roger tweet, you know, it's like Groundhog. It's like the Groundhog Day when I want you to capture the first Roger tweet of him hitting a tennis ball. And then,
it's not hard. Okay. On Twitter, I have Roger, Novak, and Rafa. All Twitter will notify me when they tweet. So I actually get a buzz. Novak Djokovic has tweeted. Yes.
In the middle of the night.
Yes.
3 in the morning Eastern time. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
I'll alert.
Well, my New Year's resolution is to be as organized on social media as Amy. That'll do it for this episode of 3. Remember, we're available on all podcast platforms. We appreciate it if you leave a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. That feature coming to Spotify soon, by the way. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to leave a comment, a like, and subscribe. We will see you next time on the next episode of 3.